Joining me now, the man who will face off on stage with Tim Walz any day now, Republican VP nominee, Senator from Ohio, and fellow serviceman JD Vance, who was in Philadelphia today on a campaign stop. Sir, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Carl. Good to be with you.
Excellent. So, Senator, as both of us joined the military because of a war, right out the gate, I want to get your thoughts on the man that you'll be running against. Essentially, he retired early because he found out his unit was deploying to Iraq. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, look, I don't really know much about Tim Walz, if I'm being honest, Carl, and I think that most of all, what the pic shows is that Kamala Harris is really doubling down on the Hamas caucus of the Democrat Party. I mean, this is a guy who wants to ban fracking. This is a guy who encouraged the people who were burning down and rioting in Minneapolis. This is a guy who wants to open the American southern border, who tried to give driver's licenses to illegal aliens in his home state of Minnesota. So I think what's most important is what it says about Kamala Harris, which is that she's deeply committed to the open borders, high inflation policies of the Biden administration, and we can't give her a promotion, right? And that's what this race is ultimately about, is Donald Trump delivered peace, he delivered prosperity, Kamala Harris delivered unaffordable groceries and an open border. It's a pretty easy choice, and Tim Walz, unfortunately, shows that she's really leaning into the hard left of her own views.
But, sir, they are trying, he's actually trying to paint himself as some moderate guy to offset Kamala's California record. Is that going to work?
I don't think it's going to work at all. I mean, look, people are going to look at his record just as they're going to look at Kamala Harris's record. And in fact, he maybe is even more of a liberal than she is, if that's even humanly possible. You know, this is a guy who says that he stands for working people. Well, I know what working people need is they need good jobs, and that's not going to happen if you destroy the American energy sector and ship all of our manufacturing jobs off to China, but that's exactly what Tim Walz has tried to do. I know that working people really suffer when illegal aliens bring fentanyl into their communities and drive down the working class wages, but Tim Walz has been all in on the open borders agenda of the Democrat Party. So this is a guy who they're going to say he looks like a moderate, he talks like a moderate. I don't think that's true at all, but even if it were, this is a guy who is governed like a very far-left radical, and it says a lot about Kamala Harris that she didn't go with, one of the more moderate options. There was the guy in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who was liked by a lot of the moderates in the Democratic Party. No, she went for the most alienating choice because this is who she is and this is how she wants to govern.
Oh, and Senator, on that point, you and obviously former President Trump are running on a record of economic prosperity. You're running on progress. You're running on things that people could tangibly touch and put in their bank account. And it seems like your opponents are running against their own record, trying to moderate and say nothing about anything. How are you going to shape the campaign trail to make sure that they are held to the account that they destroyed people's bank accounts?
Yeah, that's a very important question. So you're right. I mean, Donald Trump governed successfully for 4 years. He delivered rising wages. He delivered peace all over the world. He delivered an American leadership that was well respected and could keep peace all over the world. And he delivered the strongest border policies that we've had in 40 years. And then you have Kamala Harris, who has been working with such an unpopular president that she almost has to pretend that she didn't exist in government for the last 3 years. I mean, Kamala Harris can't say, I delivered rising wages, because she didn't. She delivered falling wages, less take-home pay, less affordable groceries. She can't say, I secured the southern border. She was the border czar at the time of the worst border crisis in history. It is an astonishing thing that President Trump is not just running on, here's what I want to do. He can, in fact, run on, here's what I already accomplished, and Kamala Harris can do the exact opposite.
Well, she didn't even show up at the job, the one job that she had as vice president. But, Senator, I know you haven't dug too much into this guy because you're standing on policy, but he is also, Tim Walz is the guy who started this he's a weird guy insult against you, but he's the guy who mandated tampons for 10-year-old boys in bathrooms in schools.
Yeah, that's pretty weird, isn't it, Carl, when you tell parents that you're going to take their children away if they don't want their 9-year-olds to get a sex change. I think it's a hell of a lot weirder than anything that I've ever said or done. And again, it drives home how the Democrats, their entire campaign is built on focus groups and political consultants. Like a social media intern has decided that attack is somehow going to stick. What I've decided is that the American people are smart enough to deal with somebody who levels with them. And the truth is that Kamala Harris's policies have been bad for working people. They've been bad for businesses. They've been bad for our foreign policy. They've been bad for national defense. She just doesn't have a record to run on. And in some ways, if you look at Kamala Harris's record such as it is, She delivered a lot of soft on crime, open border policies when she was in California. She is fundamentally a San Francisco liberal who wants to turn the entire country into San Francisco. And I guess now she has a running mate who wants to turn the entire country into Minneapolis during the summer riots of 2020. These people aren't serious about government and actually making the government work for the people. They're serious about making the government work for illegal aliens. And that's going to bankrupt our country and destroy our nation.
Yeah, Senator, the other thing, too, is the Democrat Party, and this is something that's near and dear to both of us, I think, is they've made it socially acceptable to just burn the American flag. I mean, you fought for that flag. You joined because of the war. Now you have a guy who's representing, he was in the military, but he's representing of the fact that he doesn't care about our heritage. He's representing a party that is okay with burning a flag. And then he changes his own historical state flag to resemble something more close to the Somali flag. How do you feel about that, sir?
That really bothers me. I mean, look, Minnesota used to have a beautiful flag. I think that it is incredibly symbolic that instead of defending the flag of his own state as governor, he really leaned into, again, the far left. He did exactly what they told him to do because that is fundamentally who Tim Walz is. He's a guy who does what the left tells him to do, and that's who Kamala Harris is, a woman who in her entire career in public service, and it's been a long career, has done exactly what the far left tells her to do. They're going to make a very look, it's a duo that in some ways makes sense for this very reason. If you just go back to the summer of 2020 riots, Tim Walz was encouraging rioters to burn down the city of Minneapolis. Kamala Harris was bailing those rioters out of the jail when they occasionally got caught. This is a duo that makes sense if you're a far left person. It's not a duo that makes sense if you actually want to govern this country successfully.
Sir, do you really think, though, that I mean, like, look, we've seen 50-50 propositions in almost historically every presidential race, going back after Ronald Reagan. So do you really think that this far-left agenda and her choosing him is the right move? And do you think they're even going to come close in this election? And if so, how?
Look, I think the American people are way too smart to elect Kamala Harris, a San Francisco liberal who wants to take everything that's failed in her home city and take it nationwide. I think Tim Walz is doubling down on that failed agenda. So, no, I do not think that they're going to win. But it does drive something home, Carl, that's very important about this race. Kamala Harris is not actually running a real presidential campaign. She's gone 16 days now as the presumptive Democrat nominee. She's taken zero questions from the media. She's hidden from any of the actual things that are necessary to run a campaign, to take your message to the American people, to persuade American voters. It's really disrespectful. She's effectively running the basement Biden campaign of 2020. And I think the real question is whether the media and whether the American people are going to get duped by this person. I think the American people, the answer is no. But frankly, the media needs to do a much better job. It's one thing to have a liberal bias. It's one thing to let a person campaign for president from the basement.
And, sir, I've seen you give more press conferences today than Kamala Harris has since she, obviously was chosen. She was not elected to be the presidential nominee. What do you say or for the Democrat Party? What do you say to the people out there that are like, hey, I cast a ballot for Joe Biden and now I'm stuck with Kamala Harris? Like, I mean, how do you make the big tent party the Republican Party for these people who are disenfranchised about democracy?
I'd say, my message is pretty simple. Democrat, Independent, or Republican, you're very welcome in the Republican Party. And look, it's a big tent party. Nobody's ever going to agree with each other 100% of the time. But one thing that really sets us apart as Republicans is we believe that you should have to persuade the American people before you get the opportunity to lead them. And if you go back to the 2024 Republican primaries, Donald Trump, by far the most popular Republican in the nation, he still ran for the third time in the Republican primary process because he felt he needed to earn the American people's votes. It's telling that Kamala Harris has earned precisely 0 Democratic delegates for president of the United States, and basically a bunch of billionaires working with Hillary Clinton have anointed her as the nominee of the party. That's not democracy. That's not people-led power. That is fundamentally an American oligarchy choosing who the people's president is going to be. If you don't like that, you don't have to agree with us on every issue, but at least President Trump and I respect you enough to try to persuade you and to get you to vote for us.
I like that. Well, Senator JD Vance, you are a severe asset to the Trump campaign. Sir, we appreciate you joining us. Best of luck, sir.
Thanks, Carl. Take care.